Hello everyone, are you able to hear me properly? You'll have to forgive me if I'm a little bit nervous, but hello everyone, this is Sarah Sidereal. I will be streaming commissions today. However, before we get started, I would like to thank you all for joining. Regrettably, due to technological restrictions, I cannot show you my physical form. Despite this, I wanted to be with everyone today, so I hope you can forgive my eagerness. Today, I will be trying to complete at least 2 commissions. Please feel free to ask me any questions you may have as I draw. And just so we're aware, the very first commission I actually have a blurb sent in from my client. The character that they requested is named Gregory. What they wrote to me was, let's see, this character is named Gregory, who once was a Class A example of a Chuninbyo since he claimed to be a fallen angel of the light when he was a boy. Now an adult man, he's grown much more quiet and mellow, finding his place in the world as a healer, even though he looks like a zombie eager to return from the grave. So let's go ahead. I'm going to start on my commission here, and this is where you'll quickly lose all respect for me as I have the worst sketch possible. See, the thing about sketching is my sketches look especially terrible. I respect those that can have clean lines of all things, but that is not me. And are you able to properly see my screen where I am drawing? Please just let me know. There's a little bit of a delay between the chat and the video, but please take your time. This particular commission was a bust commission, which means it will be waist up. I'm going to be drawing a few different poses and then choosing the one that I particularly like. The thing about older men is that they tend to have a bit of a wider torso, and I'm not actually very good at drawing very masculine people. Luckily, this character is not that, per se. Maybe unluckily for him. You're seeing the phone matrix at the moment? Alright, please give me one moment. Regrettably, the moment I decide to actually stream, it doesn't feel like working, so I'm going to restart really quick, but I will return. Hello everyone, I'm back. I'm going to see if my screen decides to load in the proper window at this time. There is a strict irony of since it seems like we're still in stream eternity, we're just going to have to deal with some technical difficulties at the beginning here, regrettably, as I expected. Let me know. I will be right back once more. Alright, it looks like it decided to pop up now. Making sure my connection is good. Is everyone able to see the canvas now? Please go ahead and let me know. I'm going to go ahead and get started again. The nice thing about you not being able to see the previous sketch is that it was terrible, so maybe these technical difficulties were for the best. Therefore, I'm not going to be too upset by it, and I'll return to you shortly. Now, going back into what I was talking about, drawing characters, usually I do start with a sketch, but unlike some people that tend to have very beautiful sketches, that is not me. Mine tend to look rather atrocious. That's simply the matter of how things are. The thing with drawing is sometimes it does work, and it doesn't normally work for me until I strangle it a little bit. Ooh. You may notice that this is a mobile stream. I do tend to draw on my phone. I will eventually go back to drawing on my computer once I am able to procure a working one. As of right now, I am still in need of a GPU, but if anybody knows about the current market, well, as we know, it is currently not the best place at the time. So I hope that you can bear with me as I do these mobile streams, but I will be happy to have you regardless. I do feel that blood rituals to Satan are rather specific. Are you alright, Saisha? And you'll notice that I am not the most beautiful sketcher. Now, one thing I'm a little bit guilty of in art is I tend to draw the hands off of the screen. Understandably so, I just don't necessarily like drawing them. I learned a trick the other day. It was talking about cropping and how cropping can actually help improve your art. I am very bad at cropping because every time I draw something, I want everything to be within the image. So it's a little bit difficult for me to really want to do anything where I am obstructing the image that I took all this time to draw, but sometimes it does have an aesthetic appeal to focus on the appealing features. My favorite. I can never size right every time I draw something. It's just a matter of fact. It's not very easy for me for some reason. I'm also going to go ahead and correct this hand so it looks a little less like a paw, a little bit more like something else. Put them to me. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert at drawing them, but I do like them quite a bit. Regrettably, none of the commissions today are for Sonas, so you will not be seeing that today. And then we're going back at it with the Liquify pen. Again, my favorite tool. It's what I use to correct all of my perspective. I think something like this is a pretty decent pose. I thought that it would be fitting for the character to be looking upwards, simply because there is an indication of change for the character. Change is a really fun thing to write for characters, but it needs to be done right, I think, for a character to be appealing. Not too sudden, at least, but not too slow either. When it comes to social media, it certainly does affect whether or not something gets promoted. I am not incredibly active on social media myself, but I am trying to be. But when social media crops something in an unfavorable way, it's definitely a bane of a lot of artists. I kind of wish that we could choose the cropping, at least on Twitter. I'm not completely sure about other platforms, since I just haven't really been on any as of late. As you can see, It's not quite perfect, and I think the neck is just a little too long. I'm going to raise the shoulders here. I want this shoulder to be a little bit more slack. I know it looks like a bunch of crazy scribbles. That's very normal for me. Please do not worry. It will look like a real drawing soon, in time, probably, maybe. You currently know where I am here, so at least I'm being very honest with you. It will be done in time. There's something about hands that I've noticed when people draw them. They usually draw them with the two middle fingers next to each other. And for the longest time, I didn't really get it. And so I ended up watching my hands for an extended amount of time, for maybe about a week or so. And then I realized that I was consciously making sure that the fingers didn't connect because I just didn't think it was a thing. And then when I let go of it, I realized that, yeah, people tend to group their fingers in specific ways. It's very funny. I'm going to go ahead and raise this hand here. Do some adjustments here. I think this is a pretty decent sketch. Maybe just adjust some proportions. I try to do all of the proportion adjustments at the start, just because if I try to do it later, it will be a little bit frustrating, if I'm being completely honest. The head is still a little bit too big, so I'm going to shrink that down a bit. Much better. And then this is kind of where the cropping comes in. I'm going to zoom in again just to make sure that the focus is on the character. I do think that there's a difference between tasteful cropping and social media cropping. Regrettably, if you can't choose how your image is cropped online, it doesn't seem to actually help that much. Just where I can immediately go through a sketch and know what I'm doing. I do hope to get to that point one day, but I'm quite happy of where I am. I'm gonna go ahead and bunch this here. I just think it would be an interesting silhouette. And then have it go outward this way. It does tend to crop towards perhaps more undesirable or desirable areas depending on who you are and what you prefer. I'm not going to make any comment of those that enjoy it. I will simply state that you can enjoy what you need to enjoy. I don't know why I always start at random parts in the drawing. I feel that my flow would be much better if I had a set way of drawing, but I always change on every single drawing, depending on my mood at the time. As obviously right now, the head is looking a little bit wonky, but we will fix that. And this is what I mean by going through multiple sketch iterations, at least on final pieces. This one is in my messier style, so there won't be as many sketch overs. Going to go ahead and tuck this in here. I think it's actually quite an appealing silhouette. Looks a little bit less silly this way. I don't think I've ever really talked about how much I struggle with hair. I can never seem to decide how I want to draw it. I think I'm gonna do a nice little wind here. There might need to be something that's flowing. Trying to fix some perspective here. Since they're a little bit older, I want this chin to be a little bit more square. Here we go. For those of you that are wondering, I am currently drawing on a phone. This phone is the Note 10 Plus. I actually quite like it for drawing, and I bought it specifically for that purpose. It's been serving me pretty well. Kind of deciding, I think I'll do something like this here. I'm going to close it a little bit since this character is a little bit more reserved, so they probably won't be exposing their chest as much as I drew them. Going to be crossing this closed. And apologies if the music goes in and out. Regrettably, my sound system is a little bit finicky, but as is the first. Things like drawing anatomy and stuff can be actually incredibly time consuming, so I can completely understand trying to take a break from such things. It can just be a little bit overwhelming, I would say, at the very least. I think I did a little bit of anatomy practice, or I went to school for art for a while. Wasn't necessarily my favorite thing. I think I found that I learned much quicker when I was passionate about it on my own. Though I did finish school, and that was an adventure on its own. Alright, I think that's a good second sketch. Again, you will see me go through a few iterations. You might think it's a little bit silly, and I am prone to agree with you. Anatomy, I would say it really depends on the person. Everybody has their own way of learning, and honestly, there's not really much you can do until you can figure out how you like learning. For example, for me, I'm a very visual person, and if I want to learn something, I just go ahead and do it. This anatomy right now is actually incredibly off, so I wouldn't actually trust any word that I say in regards to this. But in all seriousness, there's a lot of websites that have a lot of fantastic resources and live models, and I would get comfortable with going ahead and viewing those and practicing with those. And I think the other most important thing about art is to try not to be discouraged about your quality at the time. I think people tend to be very, very cruel to themselves when it comes to art, which is quite a shame because art is a really enjoyable practice if you're able to, I think, get past the initial disappointment of not being able to get exactly what you want on a page. I know that very well, but I think once you get past that point, once you're happy with where you're at, it's pretty nice. I lost my thought a little bit there, so you'll have to forgive me. I was very distracted by the sleeve on this character. I think the other thing is when you do start drawing or when you do start working with anatomy, even though it's good to look up to certain people and try to use people as, not necessarily use people, but to look up to people as inspiration, while that is very useful, you want to make sure that you're not necessarily comparing everything that you do to an artist that you like, because I think sometimes people tear themselves down by looking at somebody who's been doing something for, quite honestly, years, or maybe if they haven't been doing it for years, maybe they just have more time or a very effective practicing style. It's just very sad to see people discouraged simply because they're not where they want to be. I'll probably never be where I want to be, being completely honest. having a little bit of a hard time with his hand here. Going to go ahead and make some adjustments, and then I think I'll go into the final sketch in a moment. I always forget the eyebrows. I always add them on a little bit later. No clue. There's just something about eyebrows that I just don't think anyone should have them. Mind, I do have eyebrows. That is not a claim for otherwise. Procrastination is definitely a huge enemy of artists, and you will not be the first or last person to claim it. I certainly have the same thing. I've definitely laid down thinking about how much I wanted to draw, and even though I had my phone right there, which is a very useful drawing tool as I'm using it right now, well, it didn't necessarily work in my favor because I just didn't feel like it and ended up watching a bunch of YouTube videos instead. Nothing wrong with that. Aside from the fact that I was not productive at all. Sometimes this is a particular angle of the head that I don't think I've tried for a while, so I'm not very proficient at it. I'm going to box it off a little bit so I can kind of see what I was thinking. Yeah. A really useful way to think about drawing sometimes, especially if you're struggling, is to break it down into shapes. That's what I would do for hand practice specifically. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think the ear is a little bit too far. Alright, we're going to go ahead and do the infamous flip, and then I'm going to hate everything on this canvas. So let's go. Yep, I absolutely do. Alright. Let's go ahead and fix some of this, because there are quite a bit of mistakes, and that's just what a canvas flip does. If you hear my tone rising, I'm just moderately irritated, but it's alright. Art is just about, it's just a contract of pain that you agree to. I think I'm going to raise this other shoulder a bit. Tuck this in. There's something that's still a little bit off about the face, so I'm going to try to figure that out. Honestly, my favorite part of the drawing process is actually the coloring. I would say that the sketching is my least favorite, and lining used to be my least favorite, but I think I ended up liking it over time. I'm not quite sure how it happened to seduce me, however, here I am. I think there's just something satisfying about drawing a good line. Now, if you don't draw a good line, then, yeah, I mean, you go immediately back to hating it completely, but once again, just the nature. This looks a little bit better. Alright. I'm going to go ahead and reduce this and move to my bleed pen. This is the one that I use for one particular style I use. I just happen to like the messy look. There's something that's a little bit charming about it. Usually here when I do lining, I do start with the face. You'll notice that I don't do all of the lines, simply because I'm going to be shading some of them. I think I'm going to tuck this in a little. Upward angles are not my strong suit, but that's why we're doing it, and we're trying it. That's the other thing about doing art, is you really do have to get out of your comfort zone. I'm a little bit guilty of not doing that one. And I'm going to reduce the opacity on this a little bit more. A smarter trick to do than what I just did is actually to open another layer if you're going to be crossing another line, and then you can just erase the other line without interfering or accidentally erasing more than you want to. Now, on ears, I think I used to hate ears. I think there was a point that I hated everything about drawing. But over time, I think I came to really like it. Same with noses. There's something about noses that's just a little bit, you either get it or you don't. Right now, I'm not getting it. I mean, but that's okay. That happens sometimes. I will definitely come back and fix that later. I'm gonna go ahead and merge this down. Looks good to me. And then I'm gonna bring this up a little and just work on the hair for a bit. The hair is not my favorite, so I tend to work on it earlier because I know that I'm probably going to go over it again later. I think I was going to have the hair drift up a little, so I'm actually going to change how I drew some of this. There's something about the wishing motion of when you draw certain things that's incredibly satisfying. So even though hair is not my favorite, I do enjoy curly hair. There's something that's really appealing about being able to do a bunch of fun, loose strands. If I ever pause in my conversation, I'm just reading the chat. So please don't mind me as I go forward with this. Hair is one thing that I really would like to improve at. Just very varying hair types. Gonna go ahead and curl this around here. Ooh. That did not work as planned, so I'm gonna come around this way instead. I think this is kind of a nice shape. I am going to alter it a little bit because it's a little bit off. The moment they released this tool, I was ecstatic. Again, the liquify pen is super useful. Sometimes I admit I do feel a little bit guilty about using it, but I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with using a tool that benefits you, so long that it's not hurting anyone. And for me, it's not hurting me. Not having it was painful, so that's the point there. Go ahead and erase this eye. I don't know why I started on it and then abandoned it, but I sure did abandon it. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and move down to the color instead of doing the face. There's something about the face that makes me a little bit anxious just in general. Every time I draw a face, I'm always worried that I'm going to get something completely wrong, and I'm going to have to change everything, so I kind of tend to leave it for last. I'm going to go ahead and start a new layer here. Thank you for those that have sat through all the technical difficulties today. I appreciate your time. But I don't appreciate how I drew that color, so I'm going to delete all of it. I'm going to actually go ahead, just envision the shoulders here. Yeah, that sounds about right. I'll probably add the color on a little bit later. You know, thinking about it, I think I'm actually going to go ahead and roll up this character's sleeves, since it did specify in their bio that they are a healer. So I think there's something kind of appealing about the hands-on image of healers. So I think having a little bit more of the bare forearm would be a little bit more appropriate for the character. Hands. I actually quite like drawing hands. That does not speak for the quality, as per usual, but I am actually quite happy with how mine tend to turn out nowadays. I feel like I've improved quite a bit, so it's very satisfying. I think the thumb is a little bit high here, so I'm actually going to go ahead and connect this line and then erase this. I think the thumb would be a little bit lower, so I'm going to go this way. The hand is a bit too large, so I'm going to go ahead and shrink that a little bit. And because the character is supposed to be a little bit more slender, I'm also going to pull back the fingers so they're a little bit longer. The program that I'm using is actually called Ibis Paint. It's a free program, so if you're ever interested in drawing, I would highly recommend it. Going to go ahead and bring this down, finish up that arm. Apologies for all the screen sliding here. Once I have my computer up and ready to go, I will certainly make it a little bit less nauseating to watch me draw. I'm going to go ahead and work on the other sleeve. I'm going to flare it out a little bit here. Since the arm comes down here, I'm going to just draw it here. And then I'm going to draw the tuck. Being quite honest, it's been a really long time since I've streamed drawing, so I'm a little bit self-conscious about the choices I make, and I somewhat wonder if I'm making different choices because I have people watching. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad thing, but it's definitely a new experience. I think there's something still a little bit off about this silhouette, so I'm going to try to adjust some parts again. I think the neck might be a bit too thin. Alrighty. I'm going to go ahead and cinch this. I do need to adjust a couple things here. I'm going to go ahead and refocus on the face. So I'm going to merge down since I'm pretty satisfied with what I have. I'm actually going to go ahead and change the face again. I'm going to erase this nose too. Again, I think that there's something just a little off here. Alrighty. I wouldn't say that this workflow is natural, once again, but here we are. I'm going to go ahead and bring this sash up a little bit higher. And actually, I forgot. Let's flip. Doesn't look too bad, I would say. Just some minor adjustments here and there. I think the worst thing that I'm doing on the stream is flipping my canvas and exposing myself, but other than that, I can accept it. Apologies if you heard a little noise in the background. My wonderful cat decided to destroy my setup, but it's all right. I'm fine. Just a little bit emotionally wounded. I really don't like collars. That's all I really have to say. I just really don't like them. Not my strong suit. There was a time where I was very good at them because I only drew them. Alrighty. If anyone knows how to draw a collar, you're welcome to take over for me. Because I would just rather not draw it. I'll just give you the whole stream, it's totally fine. Just feel free to message me. This line is kind of an accident, but I kind of like how this line looks. It's kind of hard to explain. There's just a kind of fondness about this area here. I'll show you what I mean, just right here. I don't know what it is about this cinch, but it just looks really nice to me, so I'm going to keep it. I would not say that labels are my strong suit, no. You'll see me thinking about the collar here and there, and then not doing it. That's very normal, very natural artist behavior, don't mind me. You can observe it in the wild. See, the difference between like a professional artist and a hobbyist, I would say, is that the professional artist actually does the part that they dislike without complaining. Or I think they do complain, but it's just a little less. They just do it, and I respect that. I'm not that person. Okay, I'm thinking, once again having some mixed feelings, I'm going to go back away from it. And I'm going to go ahead and finish the sleeve instead. You know, I put this here just to think about it, but I actually quite like it there. I might actually change the color a bit. I'm suddenly struggling a lot on this other side. Gonna go ahead and bring this over and this over. And I'm gonna tuck this in. Whoop. Maybe not that much. Looking at it from afar, I'm gonna make the neckline a little more obvious. I think I'm also just going to thicken the lines on this side, just to show a little bit of depth. I actually very much like thick lines. I've seen people draw with incredibly thin lines, and I do not have the focus for it, or the bravery, perhaps. I'm gonna go ahead and tuck this in. Erase this little bit here since it didn't look quite natural with the lines that I was going for. Line there to indicate the elbow. And I'm also going to thicken these lines here. While I know some people think that it's cheating to copy and paste the eye to the other side, I think that is completely legal and it should be legalized if it is illegal. Again, kind of goes back to the I don't think there's anything wrong with using tools that you have on hand. You just might respect yourself a little more if you can do it on paper. At least that's what it is for me. If there's others that can live without that guilt, well, I think they're living better lives. Kind of talking a little bit about art. I actually tend to follow a lot of artists, and I find that the ones that I'm close friends with, I eventually start to assimilate their style. It's nothing intentional, but I always have to watch myself and make sure that I am not accidentally taking my friend's art style. Because, I mean, it would just be incredibly awkward. But we tend to naturally emulate what we see over time anyway, so it's not really that surprising. I'm gonna thicken some more lines here. Just a little quiet as I try to get a straight line. Oh, nope, that didn't work. Let's go ahead and try that again. You cannot see the gestures that I'm making. Well, you somewhat can imply them, I imagine, but they're just slight sweeping motions. They're very gentle. I'm going to go ahead and add some folds here. Didn't quite like that one. Going to try again. Control-Z is the strongest tool of the digital artist. Simply because it is the most forgiving. Once again, looking at the face and feeling scared. Going to move the bangs up a little towards. Any weird lines that happen, I recommend changing them, like this one for example, does not look very good. So I would actually just erase it and then redo them. I'm also going to erase these two. Kind of need to know where the hair is coming from. Sometimes I kind of willy-nilly draw the strands and then I have to erase everything, like what I'm doing right now. And now I'm just completely ignoring the guidelines that I made for myself, because I'm very good at that. Yes, going back to the what is hair discussion, I really don't like hair. There's some people that are very, very good at it, and if I could siphon their skill, I mean, just call me up. I'll take that if you don't want it. I'm just saying. There's no need for you to have a burden or carry a burden that you don't want, you know? I understand if you want to keep it in mind. I just, you know, just a thought. You can just wire it over to me. I've thought about that a lot. How useful it would be if you could just take a skill and just give it to someone else because you don't want it. I don't really know what skill I wouldn't want. I would have to think about it, and I'll get back to you on that. But for those watching, is there a particular skill or ability that you have that you deem as pretty useless? I would say mine is for random trivia when I'm drunk. I don't really know what the deal is, but whenever I'm a little tipsy, I just suddenly spill out the weirdest things I've found on the internet to whatever victim is, well, currently in my proximity. Do you mean knowledge in crusading, or do you mean the actual ability to go crusading? Because if it's the latter, I'd like to know more. See, but when it comes to being able to fall asleep with your alarm blaring, I think a few people have that skill just from necessity and desperation. I think especially in the last year, it's been pretty hard on everyone. I know that I have certainly slept through my alarm more than I should have, and I've gotten in trouble at work a few times for cutting it rather close. I really don't like what the hair is doing here, so I'm going to erase it. I think I like this more. We'll see in 5 minutes. I do like that the answer was yes, so I'm going to assume that you both have an infinite amount of knowledge on crusading, and you also just so happen to know a lot about it too. I mean, understandable. I would hope that you would know very well about what you are doing. I kind of like what the hair is doing. There's some problem areas, but I think it's a little bit interesting. I'm gonna go ahead and curl some bits with my liquify pen. Once again, my favorite tool. It's also my favorite thing for just adjusting things that I don't want to redraw completely. As you can see, I've been avoiding the eyes the whole time because I really don't want to draw them. But here we go anyway. I think that's a decent guideline, though it currently looks like he's blindfolded. I'm gonna go ahead and draw on the eyebrows while I'm at it. Gonna put them a little higher because the angle is slightly upwards. Gonna move this over slightly. Let's go ahead and see if we can take a shot at the eyes. Immediately didn't like that, going to delete it. I feel that is a little bit different from the theme of becoming a healer, but I mean, everyone has their own path. Kind of going for a wide-eyed look here. From what I know of the character, they have somewhat smaller pupils. This kind of stresses the tired, though I'm going to adjust the eyes in a little bit here. Worry not, I will be accentuating the death in his eyes, but that will come in the coloring stage. Don't mind my guidelines. I'm gonna go ahead and move the nose or the mouth a little bit. That is not the layer where the mouth is. That is the layer where the mouth is. The lore was specifically that he looked like a zombie. From what I know, they're particularly sleep deprived. So I suppose it was just a imagining of what we all look like inside. I actually don't mind this look. From afar, I don't think it looks bad at all. Going to go ahead. I'm a little scared to merge it down, but I'm going to merge it down. I'm going to be brave. Going to go ahead and adjust this again, just because the focus should be a little bit more on the character's expression. Going to delete this sketch layer. Now that I've deleted the sketch layer, I can see kind of other things that I don't like, and I don't like the mouth. Alrighty. Just gonna go in here and test some shadows. I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep them. Alrighty, gonna go ahead and do some slight adjustments, and I think I might be moving on to the coloring stage. Just going to add some details, such as on his shirt. And maybe try a very strong light source. This is not the way that you do light, though, and so I'm going to get rid of that. Thank you. I'm very happy that you like the eyes. Deciding, I mean, obviously the light has to be coming from over here. No, I don't like that. I'm going to delete it. Going to make it a less harsh shadow. I probably would have been smarter to do that at a different layer, but that would be if y'all was smart. I too look at lights though, when I'm very tired. I think everyone's had the moment where they just happen to be spacing out in bed, staring up at the ceiling. I really hope that other people have. At the very least, I've done that when I've had fever dreams. For those that haven't had fever dreams, I wouldn't recommend them. I would give them a 2 out of 10. Gonna go ahead and fix this finger. It's looking a little too scary. As I said earlier, because I'm seeing some chat are saying that they've had it all the time. Again, I do not recommend fever dreams. I would highly recommend against having fever dreams if you can help it. Stay hydrated. That's actually a really good way. I would recommend that you drink water every day, and I would recommend to myself that I follow my own ideas. I don't know what happened to the collar here. I think I was planning something and then it didn't happen, so I'm going to erase that. Anytime that you hear the music sway, that is me leaning back and then leaning forward to look at the drawing. And because I am streaming on my phone, it means that I'm moving my phone back and forth. So, not intentional, I just can't help it. Again, apologies if I'm interrupting your very chill music noise. I don't think music noise would be the right term for it. Oh no, I'm going to laugh at that a little too much. I'm going to stop myself. Very composed person, definitely. I do realize that the whiplash of this versus when I play games is going to be a little bit bad. But, you know, you'll find out in time. This finger looks terrible. I'm going to erase it. It probably looks terrible because of this, actually. Hands are difficult. They sure do be that difficult. I don't know what I just said, but I said it. It's too late. I'm gonna go ahead and erase the little bits that I forgot about up here. I knew I forgot something before I merged the layer down. I'm going to break some people's dreams right here and now and say that I will never read the B-movie script to you. At least it is not currently planned and will not be planned for a time. I do feel like that's a very specific way to look at hands, but I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and agree. But they're parasites that feed you, so are hands really parasites? You know, I've thought a lot about it, but like, let's talk about babies for a second here. In the grand scheme of things, babies are kind of terrifying. Like, not just like horror movie babies, but like actual babies. Like, if you think about the fact that babies literally just absorb nutrients for 9 months. I mean, like, just like any baby. It's kind of messed up. Just saying. Like, they always show those movies, those horror movies where, like, a creature breaks out of the womb, but, like, that's what a C-section is. Anyway. Now, going back, just looking back at the chat, I would indeed read the Shrek script to you. If you really want me to read the Shrek script movie, once I reach enough subscribers, I'll consider it. As of right now, I don't feel that I'm powerful enough to be justified in reading the Shrek script movie. There's this one particular song in this playlist that just goes in and out, and it decides not to keep playing. And I understand, I mean, me too sometimes, but I'd appreciate it if it tried harder. Going ahead and looking at this over here. Yeah, I think this is looking all right. Once I am powerful enough, I will read you the Shrek script. It will be my first stream promise, and I'm going to regret it if I ever do become famous. Which won't happen, so I should be alright. I feel like that's a 100 subscriber goal, 500. I mean, memes are very, very justified. My favorite memes are the cat memes. I'm a very simple person. I'm easy to please. I just really like cats. Don't really know what I'm doing with the hands here, but I'm doing it. So here we are. I'm going to go ahead and pull this line back so it looks a little less scary. I think I maybe made it look more scary. Let's see. I mean, that's just scary. There we go. Alright, I'll take you up on that. 500 subscriber goal. I will read the whole Shrek movie script. And then I'll stop streaming forever. I won't. I'll probably keep going. But I'll be a little bit fearful of whatever goals lie ahead of that. Trying to figure out what I want to do with the hands here. This character's hair is actually black, but I don't want to make it pure black because I feel like it would lose some of the shape. Is Shrek 2 good enough to be a 1,000 subscriber goal? Now, I think it's a pretty good sequel. Like, I would say it's the best follow-up to the Shrek movie. But is it worth the 1,000 subscribers? Like, I need my audience to tell me. Is that what you really want at 1,000 subscribers, is the Shrek 2 reading? I feel like we have to see how Shrek 1 goes first. I feel like if Shrek 1 isn't enjoyable enough for you, I don't think we can commit to Shrek 2. Might be better to play a drinking game at that point. Let me go ahead and just block this off. I recognize that I said 2 commissions today, but now that I've been working on this for a while, I realize that I'm, quite frankly, just not powerful enough. However, I will finish this one today as promised. Gonna go ahead and try to do some shading in here. Not sure how I feel about that. Going to delete it immediately. So are we just implying, I just need to know, that the amount of subscribers is equivalent to the Dragon Ball Z power level of streamer? If so, I'm very intimidated. I forgot that I put the light source up there. I've been following it this whole time, but I forgot that it was there. Feels pretty good. Say that the character feels pretty solid. I'm actually quite proud of this. Maybe having a few set of eyes does make me a better artist. Due to fear. As of right now, I am strictly limited to mobile games. But if anyone has any suggestions, go ahead and drop it in the chat, and I will see if I can play it for you. Might be a little bit more lively. This is a bit more of a laid-back stream, but there's nothing wrong with relaxing. I think especially on a Friday, if you've had a long and tiring work week. I know that I'm one of those people, and I hope that those that have had a long week at least get a break today. Alright, I think I'm going to go ahead and get into the color now. First of all, though, I'm just going to check that there are no spaces or gaps that the color won't go through. That is the one disadvantage of this style, is that it's not super easy to close off for me. I'm gonna go ahead and tuck this in. I think that's my favorite phrase for the night, just to tuck something in. It just has so many different purposes or meanings. Let me go ahead and just edit that. What do we think, fellas? Does it look ready to color? I am seeing some game suggestions. I will make sure to check them out, no worries. I realize that I probably should have put up the chat on my stream, but, well, you learn. You learn and you fail and then you try again. Okay, so what I'm doing right here is probably a trick that you've seen. I actually have to increase the expansion level on this one to make sure that it goes completely in the line. That's not quite far. But I'm selecting the outside area. That looks good. And I'm clicking this little button here to invert. And I'm going to go ahead and just choose a large brush, make a layer underneath. You can actually see there's a selection layer up here. I'm going to go ahead and fill this in with a gray. This is probably my favorite part, is just actually blocking out the color. I'm actually going to go ahead and darken the background now too. Usually when you color, I've heard that it's better to start with a darker background, just so you're not immediately going to the brightest of the brights. I think it immediately looks a little bit more polished. Alright, now that I've stared at it for a quick moment, let's go ahead and focus, I think, on doing the skin first. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to clip all of these layers, and then I'm going to turn on my bucket tool. I couldn't remember what it was called for a second there. I know that this character is incredibly pale. You will notice that I'm going to adjust the colors a lot. I'm actually going to start with a darker color though. A little desaturated. Then I'm going to go ahead and go in with my pencil just to fill in any places where I think that the bucket tool did not hit. The nice thing about doing colors on different layers is you can go back and clip the layer on some programs. Normally I would actually do a colored line, but for this particular piece I'm going to stick with the pure black. Alrighty, gonna go ahead and make a few different layers to clip here. I'm gonna go ahead and come in and color any spots that I miss. You'll definitely see that between the fingers. But there is a unsaid magic power in digital media, I will be completely honest. I'm going to go ahead and just choose a dark blue for the hair. I also think, yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I'm gonna actually go ahead and clip this so I don't have to worry about gonna go ahead and delete the area or erase the area around the eyes just so I can color underneath it. If I recall correctly, the character's eyes are a blue color. Yes, I do a layer for each color. I just find it easier to manage that way. I think I actually quite like the gray for the sleeves there. Might do a different color for the sash. Gonna go for a gold since this character is a healer. Maybe a little bit more. Thinking about what color the lighting's going to be, but I'll not worry about that right now. I'm going to go ahead and clip this layer here. And I'm going to go ahead and just edit the color a little bit. It will remember my very last settings. And I'm just going to make sure that none of the colors look too bizarre. Alrighty. Going to go ahead and I think I'm just going to try to find a airbrush. I don't actually like always going in with blush with a pink or red color. It's kind of fun if you go and try different colors. I tend to like to put a little bit on the knuckles or places where your skin likes to crease. We're going to go ahead and try to go for that sickly look. Just by adding underneath the eyes. I might actually need to do an overlay layer. I'm going to go ahead and just work on the shirt here. I'm going to use a softer one here. I actually don't tend to use an airbrush to shade. I don't find it very, what's the word? It's not always appealing, but for this particular one, I think it works really well. I'm going to go ahead and erase some of this. This is where I realized that I didn't have the layer clipped, so there's probably a little bit of overlay. Remember to clip your layers, kids. If you don't, you'll feel sad. I'm going to go ahead and just going to be doing some shading here. I'll strike a deal with you. If I ever reach 10,000 subscribers, and I'm putting this here because I'll be safe, but if I ever reach 10,000, I'll read the B-movie script. If I put it up there, I'm safe. Gonna go ahead and clip the hair here. Grab this black. I'm actually gonna use that as the shade here. Make sure that it is the right color. It sure is. I think it's been a pretty long week, or at least a very eventful one for me. I imagine that for some of you it's been about the same. A good highlight of my week, though, is I went to a particular coffee shop. I'm not going to list which coffee shop, but I went to a particular coffee shop and they had a cotton candy flavored drink, and I'm probably going to go ahead and get one of those because they're open until 2 a.m. after the stream. Was it good? The answer is yes, before anybody asks, and I know it doesn't sound that great, but I think you should give cotton candy a try sometimes. Is it particularly childish in taste? Perhaps. But I'm going to stay under the impression that I will be safe from 10,000. Oop. That's another issue of not clipping the layer. Once again, remember to clip your layers, kids. I'm going to go ahead and make a folder. Oop, that is not a folder. I'm going to go ahead and make a folder and just add all of these little layers into it. Might mess up the coloring for a second here. There we go. I'm going to close this folder, make a new layer, and then I'm going to take a special brush. Don't know what that brush is yet. I just know it will be special, and I'll know when I find it. I do like this fluffy watercolor. Yeah, that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and dapple. I'm going to smack Gregory here with this in whatever color I want. I'm going to go ahead and set it to multiply. I'm going to make an additional layer that I'm just going to put on top for the eye bags. And once again, I'm going to use the airbrush for that. I think I'm going to use some of that dampling effect a little bit on his face. You'll notice that his hand is a little bit more bluish because of that, and I kind of like that effect actually. I think it makes it look a little interesting. Ooh. I'm not sure, can you hear my pen? Or is that content that you want me to make? I feel like that's oddly specific. So we're gonna go ahead. I think we wanted a very vivid background. I'll take this yellow. You'll see that I tried a few different colors. I actually quite like that. I'm going to adjust this a little bit. Make it look a little bit less like he fell on his arm. This is actually where I really like to use strong lines, especially in the background. I just think it kind of makes things fun and interesting. Not really sure how I feel about that. I'm going to go ahead and take a rather large brush and just do some over the effects here. It'll look a little strange for a second, but you'll just have to bear with it. No, that's probably what it looks like to be staring at the sun for too long. Now it's kind of going a little bit too yellow, I think, so I'm going to try different colors. That was unexpected, but kind of cool, but not what I'm looking for. Gonna do another layer for the bottom. And I'm gonna just blur this a little bit. I think the background's gonna need a little bit of texture. Nothing too distracting because I don't want to pull too much away from the character. Let's go ahead and see what we have. With holes. I'm an adult. Anyway, let's see what else we have. Got some fun little stamps. I don't think I'm looking for those though. I think I'm looking for more of a textured brush. Try this. Oh. I was in the wrong section there. Charcoal mod. If it looks like I don't know what I'm doing with this, that is correct. I'm just seeing how it looks. I'm gonna go ahead and do some shading that I missed here and there. With the right brush. Don't really want to blur it that much. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and just do a little bit more detailed shading on the skin. Ooh. Alrighty. Gonna go ahead and give the bangs a little attention. Suddenly couldn't speak there. And let's go ahead and give the hands a little bit of love. Gonna go ahead and just make the shading a little more aggressive down here. I might erase it if I don't like it. Probably more this way. Next time I stream, I will definitely go ahead and make sure that I put the chat to the side. I'm learning a few things today, so I appreciate everybody coming by. Not ending the stream at this moment, but just kind of a side thought. I do really appreciate it. Do I want this? This arm? I think I do. I think I do want this arm. Alrighty. Going back and just doing some additional touch-ups. Gonna go back over here. Yeah. Oop, and that was a little. Going to go ahead and just brighten up the sides of his hair. There you go. Alrighty. Maybe a little too intense on that one. Gotta delete that. Make it a little smaller. Gonna erase this right here. There's just a little bit of black that I didn't need. Alrighty. You'll notice that I always go a little bit quieter when I work on the hair. It's just because my brain doesn't really know how to comprehend it. It's trying its best. With varying. Gonna go ahead and bring this over here. Alrighty. Gonna go ahead and sign. To touch this up, but I'm not sure what those things are. It's looking at something and thinking that it's complete, and oh, I know what I was going to do. I'm going to go ahead and add a layer from the canvas, and there's a very useful tool that is called the color balance tool. As you can see, it's a little bit out of whack at the moment, but it's very nice. Another useful tool that I'll show you is actually the Gradation Map. If you do art, you probably know what this one is, but I actually like to use it as an overlay, and then to reduce the layer to make things a little more cohesive. I've seen many innocent-looking 30-year-olds. You can't trust a 30-year-old. I might actually go ahead and multiply this instead of overlay it. I'm going to go ahead and erase where it doesn't serve me. And I think I want to make the darks a little darker. Sing it out. I think I might actually like that quite a bit. Gonna go ahead and bring some of those red shadows onto his face. Just in some of the inner shadows. I wouldn't say that I'm perfect at that, but it's kind of nice looking. That's a little too dark. Alrighty. I'm gonna go ahead and just blur or blend in some areas that I think don't need to be too sharp. You never want to blur something too much, else it's gonna look a little bit strange, I find. I think that the shirt could use a little more folds. And maybe a little bit more of an implication of a shadow under the fingers here. Very nice. You know, I find myself watching a lot of art tutorials or a lot of art things. I actually own a ton of art books, but I probably don't use them as I'm supposed to, because the main reason that I use art books is so I can look at the pictures. And I do think that you can learn a little bit just by looking at pictures in art books, but I don't feel like that's the purpose of them. Now, sure, I've definitely read a few of them, but for whatever reason, I just kind of end up collecting them. But it's kind of the same with the art tutorials that I watch online. Like, I watch them, I'm super attentive because, you know, being completely honest, I forget everything that I'm told in the tutorial, and I kind of start doubting myself whether or not I can follow through with it. Thinking back at it, it's pretty silly to watch something to improve and then to back up on it immediately. But I think I just get a little bit intimidated, or I think I tell myself that I'm not able to do it. Especially videos on like perspective and such. I've always wanted to do perspective, but there's just something about perspective that's just so scary to me. I don't know if like you've ever watched a tutorial on something and gone, I'm never going to do this. I do that a lot. I watched a tutorial on power washing, and I'm really obsessed with it. I think a lot of people are. But like, thinking about it, I'm never gonna probably deal with a power washer anytime soon, so I don't really understand why I watched a how-to instead of watching somebody power wash. Going ahead and just playing with some colors here on the lines. I said I was going to settle on block, but I just a bright golden light. I'll definitely have to avoid that for the next piece. Ooh, that was absolutely not what I was trying to do. Only a lot of classes that you take in school where you learn the skill because they tell you that it's necessary, but that's just because I was passionate about what was going on and what I was learning. But looking back at it, I never really used it in my real life, so it wasn't really a skill that I needed, but I had fun with it, so I guess that's all that really matters. Now, for stuff like physics, are you having fun? Or calculus? I suppose some people do. I'm gonna go ahead and give the bottom of the shadow a little bit of a blue light instead of black. So it's a little more dynamic. I'm gonna steal this grayish color from down here for that. I think I like it. I see that we have some people that don't like math in here. That is completely understandable, me too. Mind, I don't think I'm actually very bad at math. I'm gonna go ahead and patch up these lines that aren't as good. Maybe not with the airbrush. I want to make sure you watch for gaps and stuff when you draw art. For this particular style, it isn't a huge deal. But there's certain areas where it's a little more noticeable and you might want to fix that. You know, one class that I feel like is kind of required but is never quite taught right, and of course I'm going to say this, but I actually really like art, but I feel like when you go to school and you do art, it's not like really how you want to learn art, I suppose. It was always my favorite class, but then I always thought it would be my favorite class, and then when I did it, I didn't really like art. It sounds really funny looking back at it and seeing where I am now. What I'm doing right now, if you'll see me zooming out and zooming in, which you could potentially argue has been this whole entire video, I am actually seeing if anything stands out or looks weird or distracts from the composition, just so I can go ahead and clean up those lines. Just gonna slide over here with the dip pen again. And do this at a slightly lower. You know what's really hard to draw is knuckles. Not the echidna. Just knuckles. Kind of like knees. Something about knees that kind of freak me out. Yet here we are. Didn't draw knees in this one, mind, but I definitely will draw them. For a while, I was very obsessed with the whole looking for faces in knees. Not necessarily recommending it, just stating that it was a thing that I did. I don't think it's good to be paranoid about whether or not your neighbor has a face in their knees. Or to ask, honestly. I definitely have, wherever I sit down, my knees will crack very loudly. And it's always a very loud, dramatic noise. And my knees are just fine. I asked my doctor. My knees are just fine. But that doesn't make it any less scary. I think I'm going to go ahead and clean up this face line. I will sometimes go in with the dip pen if I don't like how a certain line looks, and still use a hard line instead, even though most of the style is kind of shaky. I do need to turn off the lighting though really quick here, so I can properly grab the color of that line. Go ahead and clean that up a little. I think that looks much better. I'm gonna clean up this too. Normally I would add lights to their eyes at this point, but I just don't think it really fits the character.